Welcome to Margot Dreams of Baking. Today I have a video for you that's completely different from any of the other videos that I've done so far. I'm going to make a Valentine's Day cake today, but I've never made this cake before and I don't have a particular recipe for it. I'm going to walk you through my process of how I designed the cake and hope that it works out. Wish me luck! I wanted to make a cake to celebrate Valentine's Day. Last year I did a heart-shaped cake that was a chocolate cake filled with raspberry filling, and I did a chocolate heart that was swirls of dark chocolate and white chocolate. I wanted to do something different this year. I've done a lot of chocolate and raspberry lately, so I wanted to do a completely different flavor profile. Since I already had a heart-shaped mold, I decided to use that in some way. And then I got the inspiration to do something that was topped with Mirror Glaze. Now, I've only done Mirror Glaze twice before. Once worked really well, the other did not. So I'm a little nervous about that one. When I set about thinking about my flavors, I decided not to do chocolate at all. So I started thinking of stuff that was red. Raspberries I've done, lots, so I wanted a different flavor. Strawberries, I didn't really want those, they go well with chocolate. Then I thought about cherries. That would be good. And what goes well with cherries? Almonds go well with cherries. So I thought I would make an almond cake with some kind of cherry filling. Probably make it some kind of mousse cake because usually with Mirror Glaze they go over top of a mousse cake. And then I would top that overall with a red and white Mirror Glaze. So first thing I did was I started thinking about what I was going to do for my layers. I decided I would do a sponge cake since it would be nice and light, probably easy to stack, wouldn't put up a lot of resistance in cutting with the mousse. So I looked up some recipes for almond sponge cake and came across one that uses just eggs and almond flour with sugar and some flavoring. So I decided to go with that. Then I thought I would do an almond mousse in the middle and a cherry filling. So I already have a raspberry filling that I do quite often, so I thought I would modify that one to use cherries. Then I thought, okay, I'll have some cake on the bottom, some cake on the top. I'll put some cherry mousse all around the outside before adding my glaze. Now, one of the issues that I had was with cake and mousse, that's a lot of soft textures, and usually you want something to contrast that. So I thought I would make some sort of crunch layer. And most crunch layers, when you look them up, they include chocolate. I didn't want to do chocolate this time. I considered white chocolate, but worried that that might make it too sweet. So then I decided to make a almond praline with some caramel and toasted almonds. And then I would chop those up, put some of it into a paste, some of it in bigger pieces, mix that together, and add something else for some crunch. Usually in most high-end desserts they use feuilletine, which is almost like dried crepes, crunchy crepes, but those are really hard to get here and very expensive if you look on Amazon. So I set to thinking what else I could use because I didn't want to make them myself. I didn't know how well that would go. Somehow it hit me to use waffle cones. They're not too sweet. Ice cream cones stand up to ice cream and don't get soft. So I decided, okay, maybe I'll use some of that. So then I started thinking about how to do the layers overall, where the crunch layer should be. Should it be at the bottom? And I started drawing out a picture. And this is what I came up with. So on the bottom I have one layer of almond cake, some cherry filling, almond mousse. I thought the crunch layer in the middle would be nice to separate. Another layer of the almond mousse, a layer of cherry filling, almond cake. Around the whole thing, I would do some cherry mousse and then top that all with a Mirror Glaze. So that's my idea. And I've said us about looking up recipes and seeing what works, what my own ideas were, and I've written it all out here. And I'm going to try and put it together. I have a feeling it'll work in terms of the components will work. I'm not sure how the Mirror Glaze will work, and I'm not sure how the taste will be altogether, since these are things that I've never put all together. There's no recipe for this whole cake. So here I go. Throughout the next bit of the video, you'll only see mainly what I'm doing in the bowl, not seeing my face, because I'm going to be referring to my ingredient lists and my instructions a lot since I've never done this before. But I'll do a voiceover and tell you what I've done. I really hope this works out, and I hope it's beautiful. Wish me luck. Needless to say, my cake turned out really well. I was going to do a video showing all of the different steps from making the sponge cake to the 2 kinds of mousses and the cherry filling, but that would have turned out to be quite a long video. So I decided instead to just show you how I put the layers together and give a tutorial on how to do a mirror glaze. To build my cake layers, I put the cake inside my heart-shaped cake tin that was lined with some plastic wrap, and then I put an acetate collar around to build the sides. I brushed each cake layer with half a tablespoon of amaretto liqueur, which doesn't give it an alcoholic flavor, it just helps boost the flavor of the cake. Next, I put half of my cherry filling over top of the cake, and then I froze that for 30 minutes to solidify the filling before adding the next layer. Once the cherry filling was solid, I added half of my almond mousse over top. Then I sprinkled the almond praline crunch filling over top of the almond mousse. After that, I put the cake in the freezer for another half hour to solidify the mousse before adding the next layer. Once the almond mousse and praline crunch layer had set, I spread the second half of the almond mousse over top of that and put it back in the freezer for another 30 minutes. Next, I added the second half of my cherry filling and topped it with the second layer of almond sponge cake. Then I put the whole cake in the freezer again for an hour to solidify it. I think I could have done a little longer to make sure that almond mousse was frozen solid, because I did get some that seeped out the side after. Before I could add the cherry mousse, I needed to unmold the cake from the pan. First, I created a heart-shaped cake board that I cut out of sturdy cardboard and covered with aluminum foil that was just a little bit bigger than the cake. Then I turned the cake upside down onto that cake board and lifted the top off. Finally, I added my cherry mousse all over the top and sides of the cake. Now, I didn't strain my cherry puree before adding it to the mousse, and I think I should have because it made it a bit lumpy and hard to make smooth. However, after freezing the cake overnight and getting it nice and solid, I was able to go over the whole cake with a butter knife and smooth out any lumps before adding the glaze. For my mirror glaze, I followed the recipe from southernfatty.com. First, to a bowl, add 15 grams of gelatin, which is 2 packs, and top with 80 grams of cold water. Let that sit for 5 minutes so that the gelatin can absorb the water. Next, to a medium saucepan, add 100 grams of water, 200 grams of sugar, and 200 grams of light corn syrup. Bring to a simmer over medium-high heat until the sugar has completely dissolved. Once the sugar has dissolved and the liquid looks clear, whisk in your bloomed gelatin, followed by 150 grams of sweetened condensed milk. Pour the hot sweetened condensed milk mixture over 200 grams of finely chopped white chocolate. You can use milk or dark chocolate as well, but that means that you won't be able to color it. Let the chocolate mixture sit for 5 minutes so that the chocolate can begin melting. Then, with an immersion blender or a whisk, blend the mixture until it's completely combined. Strain the mixture through a fine mesh strainer to get rid of any bubbles. Then you can divide it up into bowls to add food coloring. I chose to do 3 colors, so I separated it into 3 bowls of 1 cup of glaze each. To get the color effect that I wanted for my Valentine's heart cake, I chose to use 3 different colors. First, I chose red. Then I added some white food coloring to one of the bowls just to make it more bright white. And finally, I did a pink color. Then I poured each of the 3 glazes into a pitcher to combine them all. Because I was worried about bubbles in the mixing process, I chose to put them through a strainer again. Then I needed to wait until the mixture cooled down to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the mixture was cool enough, I did a bit of a stir just to combine the colors a little bit, and I was ready to glaze my cake. To glaze the cake, I put my frozen cake over top of a bowl that was set in a rimmed baking sheet to catch any glaze that fell off the cake. It's very important that your cake is frozen solid before adding the glaze in order for it to work properly. Then all you need to do is pour the glaze all over top, adding swirls and designs as you want. Once you have finished glazing your cake, let it sit for 15 to 20 minutes in order for the glaze to set. Then with a knife, you can slowly cut through and push the glaze towards the center of the bottom of the cake to cut off the edges. I got the idea from MK Cakes to add coconut to the bottom of my cake to make a cleaner edge, and I thought the white coconut would match really nicely with the pink and white colors of the cake. And finally, I added a few white chocolate curls to decorate the top of the cake. Now that the cake had set fully, I was able to move it to my cake plate. To do this, I used a large barbecue spatula to help me lift the cake off of the bowl and onto the cake plate. Before I cut into this cake, I just wanted to give you a shot of the complete cake, all decorated. I love how shiny this glaze is. I'll try and turn it and see if it catches the light. You can see it reflecting all the lights around it. It is so amazingly shiny. And the mix of the 3 colors turned out really well too. I probably didn't need those white chocolate curls on top, but overall I'm really happy with how this turned out. The coconut around the bottom just gives a really nice, makes a cleaner edge than just where I cut off the Mirror Glaze on the cake. It's so pretty looking. I'm just crossing my fingers that it's just as good inside. So my cake is all done. It was definitely a labor of love this weekend. Here's a couple of things I learned along the way about making a Mirror Glaze cake and a mousse cake, because I don't make those very much. First things first, there was so much mousse in the center that when I put the top layer on top and put the cherry mousse around, the stuff in the middle started oozing out the sides. So I think what I would do next time is do a layer of cake, a layer of the cherry jam, a layer of almond mousse, then cake, cherry jam, almond mousse. Freeze that very solid, then put the cherry mousse around it. Now, before you do the Mirror Glaze, you have to make sure that your cake is frozen solid. And I didn't take time for that or account for that when I was doing it, so I ended up having to glaze it the next morning. But as long as you leave time for it to freeze solid, it should take like 3-4 hours for it to freeze solid. I let mine freeze overnight, and then what I did was in the morning I went over it with a butter knife and just made sure it was completely smooth, because any imperfections that you have in the smoothness of the cake are going to show through in the Mirror Glaze. Because I did that, it made it really easy to work with the next morning once it was frozen. But actually doing the glaze, it worked out really well. The most important thing is to be aware of your temperatures. You want to glaze it about 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Celsius in order for it to work properly, so it doesn't, if it's too hot, it'll just run off the cake. If it's too cold, it'll kind of gloop and it won't go smooth like it should. So all that's left now is to taste test. I've tasted bits and pieces of the components. The only thing I haven't tried is the actual cake part. and they all tasted good on their own, so let's see how it is together. This is really nice. It's got a good almond flavor, but I wouldn't say it's overpowering. And the cherry really comes through too, and they match really, really well together. You get that crunch in the middle, which is a nice textural contrast. I would definitely make this one again, so I will be posting the recipe. And although it was a bit of an adventure this weekend, if you have the time to do it and want to make an impressive dessert, this is the way to go. So here I present my Valentine's cherry almond layer heart cake with a mirror glaze on top. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing sort of what my process is when I'm experimenting with recipes and learned something along the way. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. For the complete recipe, visit margotdreamsofbaking.ca.